Story 1. Someone showed up at my door at 12:30 a.m. on a weekday, ringing the doorbell and banging on the door because I didn't answer her messages and calls as I was sleeping. Story 2. Using a baby voice and infantilizing yourself is not cute. It is disturbing and makes me uncomfortable. We are both adults in our 30s, so please do not act like a child to manipulate me into doing something. Story 3. She said we were destined to be together because we were the same age and older students in university. She conveniently forgot that there were other older students of the same age as well. She sent me multiple messages about how we were meant for each other, despite my stating that I had a girlfriend. She demanded pictures of my girlfriend as proof. I blocked her, but she spent the next few years trying to stalk me. She attempted to find my workplace so she could apply there and tried to locate my home so she could move nearby. All of this happened because I had been nice to her one time when she needed assistance. I helped her call a locksmith when she was locked out of her apartment. Story 4. I had a woman ask me about my sperm count on the first date. She also sent me a music playlist of about 60 songs based on the taste she thought I would have, but it didn't match. Additionally, she drained the water from the tea bag after use. Story 5. Sharing too many details of her troubled life right after just meeting can be overwhelming. A few years ago, I was swimming at my apartment complex pool on an extremely hot day, and the pool was packed. A young woman approached me and started a friendly conversation. Within 5 minutes, she shared where she was from and detailed her difficult family life. About 10 minutes in, she asked which building I lived in, and I chose to keep my apartment address vague. Another 10 minutes later, she finally picked up on the fact that I wasn't really interested and made the situation awkward by asking if she was bothering me. I essentially said, "Yes, a little. I was just trying to swim a few laps and mind my own business." And she looked distressed. Story 6. I went on a few dates with a police officer. She asked me if I was free one night, but I had plans. Later that evening, while driving to a friend's house, guess who pulled me over? She wanted to know why I told her I was busy when I was obviously free. I found that pretty creepy. Story 7. When my best friend falls head over heels for a new guy every week, it sometimes weirds me out. Story 8. I have a neighbor girl who constantly watches me. I've barely ever spoken to her in the 5 or 6 years that she's lived here because I felt uncomfortable around her. She works at a bank and has found out that one of her customers is my family's lifelong friend. He called me after I got my boat, motorcycle, and recreational vehicle after I was carrying building supplies into my house and asked questions each time. He would say, "Oh hey, what's up? I heard you got a new bike. Emily told me it's a newer red one. What kind is it? I heard you were carrying a bunch of drywall into the house. When are you going to start hanging it?" She watched me cut my grass, work on cars, and anytime I see her, she's very awkward and barely says hi. She's in her house all the time, so I think she's watching me from the window. He called me the other day to say she's moving, and I couldn't be happier to hear that. Story 9. Story time. I think this qualifies as creepy. When I was 13 or 14, I dated a girl named Heather. She was sweet enough. It was only about a month in when we were on the phone, and she started talking about animals. She mentioned how she abuses them. Right then, she told me about a bird she put in a microwave and a cat she put in a dryer. Little kid me was completely freaked out and ended it instantly. There was just some light stalking after that, but I definitely felt much worse about the animals than anything she could do to me. Story 10. I worked as an assistant manager at a skate shop in a mall years ago and had a 16-year-old sales associate who kept hitting on me. I was 20 at the time. She said some inappropriate things even after I asked her to stop, but my manager thought I was joking. One incident occurred behind the register when I was taking items out of a box, and she ran her nails on my back. I immediately contacted our manager, who did not believe me and took her side. The next day, the sales associate cornered me in the back room, trying to tell me a secret, when the manager came in on her day off and witnessed everything. The sales associate was immediately fired. I quit about a month later because it was frustrating not being believed, no matter how many times I reported the incidents. Story 11. I dated a woman who threw her phone through my living room window because I hadn't called her that night. Story 12. I had a girl make cookies for me once. She claimed she used her menstrual blood. I don't think she actually did, but it was strange. I'm into some unusual things. Story 13. Go to my mom's house and tell her that you are my girlfriend. Befriend her until you become best friends. I will be deployed with no communication to the outside world, and I have never given you the address to my mom's house. I have seen you twice in my life, and we have only hooked up once. Story 14. On a few occasions in college, I would be sitting in the cafeteria or library with headphones on, studying or doing homework, when a random woman would start freaking out and accosting me. Felt like she was having a nervous breakdown and taking it out on me. I don't know if freakouts can be considered creepy, but it made me uncomfortable. Story 15. Creepiness usually involves crossing boundaries in a way that makes people uncomfortable. For women, just like men, it can include excessive staring, invading personal space, ignoring clear social cues, or being overly persistent after rejection. Story 16. As a gay man, I have encountered women who believe they can change me. This happened once with a young woman of my age. She kept touching me while she was drunk. I told her to stop. She yelled, "I can change you," and leaned in for a kiss, which I blocked with my hand. Her friend smacked the back of my head and told me to stop. Story 17. When you crash your car in a snowstorm, a woman takes you to her house, looks after you, and tells you the phone lines are down. She won't let you leave until misery is reborn again. Story 18. I used to find it unsettling when girlfriends would follow people on social media, such as new colleagues, neighbors, and friends of friends. It seems more common than I initially realized. I still find it unsettling, though. Story 19. My roommate dated a girl who was interesting but definitely a bit unusual. She reminded me of Luna Lovegood. She was fun to talk to, but I wouldn't leave her alone with sharp objects. Story 20. I met a friend's girlfriend for the first time. They had been together for 9 weeks. She introduced herself to me as his fiancée. I immediately felt uneasy and suggested to him later that perhaps this was not a good decision, but he disagreed. Things took a turn after that. She became pregnant. He claimed that the condom broke, but I doubt he used one. And his father attempted to pay her to get an abortion. In response, she repeatedly threatened to harm herself, but she did not follow through. Ultimately, she gave birth to a baby boy and then left with a man 25 years older than she is. Story 21. Going from obsessing over one person she can't be with to focusing on me, the way she was upset with the other person for things beyond their control makes me believe it doesn't matter how much she thinks she likes me. Eventually, she will come to resent me just like she did with the other individual. Story 22. Showing up to my work, home, and when I am shopping to beg me to take her back and forgive her for cheating. It has been 7 years. Leave me alone. Story 23. Boy, do I have a list. Stalking, harassment, gossip, not taking no for an answer, and crossing boundaries are issues faced by both men and women. Men are often labeled as creepy, while women may spread rumors and create stories to damage reputations and social lives. Story 24. A male friend of mine told me about a woman who kept diagnosing him with various mental disorders when he opened up to her about his past and traumas. Story 25. If, by the third date, she has already made plans for our wedding, children, and activities after retirement, I think that is somewhat creepy. Story 26. There are clear warning signs on both sides. Constant jealousy, excessive calls, love confessions on the first date, hypercontrol, obsession with astrology, being fixated on children, especially if this comes up early in the relationship, and imposing personal ideals onto someone else. Ultimately, it's about violating boundaries, which is always concerning and unappealing. Story 27. When you do not answer her calls, she waits outside your house and then follows you in her car. This turns into a chase because you still do not want to talk to her. Story 28. More unusual than frightening. She moved to the countryside after dreaming about a man and set out to find him. My colleague matched the description. Story 29. A person with a negative attitude, someone who does not know how to apologize, takes everything personally, and lies about minor matters. Story 30. When she can't control her hands and touching behavior. We understand that women find arms and shoulders attractive, but that doesn't mean you can touch me at every opportunity. Story 31. I had an ex-girlfriend try to convince me to harm one of her previous boyfriends. She never said it explicitly, but she made it clear what she wanted. Story 32. Trying to be funny like a stand-up comedian shows attention-seeking tendencies. It is very possible to be naturally humorous. I don't know why it always creeps me out, but it does. It creates a ridiculous expectation that I should laugh almost every time you speak, or else I am acting weird. I have a theory that people who try to be funny are often nervous. Story 33. I have had a stalker. It becomes unsettling when you know someone and see them acting out of character, realizing you are the reason for their behavior. I am a professional musician. Years ago, I started talking to a woman who was a friend of a friend, and we seemed to hit it off. We met, but it honestly just didn't click. I thought we both felt it, but then she started asking me to get together again. I took the difficult step of saying I didn't think we were a good match. She seemed to accept that. Then, she showed up at one of our performances. She was very much a homebody, which struck me as odd, but I let it go. Next, she appeared at a show 3 hours away from where she lived. Then, she followed me to an entirely different state. She followed me across 4 states, each time offering to get a hotel room for us, trying to flirt and seduce me, and I was honestly so confused. I couldn't comprehend how she wasn't understanding that I wasn't interested. It took about 6 months for her to finally back off, and we never spoke again. It took me much longer to realize that stalking isn't supposed to make sense when you are the one being stalked. The person no longer actually cares about you. They seek a personal victory, like hunting down a collectible. The thing that initially creeped me out was seeing her show up in Columbus, Ohio. She drove over 3 hours on her own, having rarely left her own town during the time I had known her. She had told me she didn't like traveling, yet she seemed determined to pursue me. It felt like an uncanny valley experience. Seeing someone you knew did not belong in the place they were. Story 34. Men often exhibit a double standard. If women want to smell your armpit, it is considered creepy. If your girlfriend wants to smell your armpit, it is seen as cute. Story 35. When you are spending time with her, you suddenly receive a call from your friend. You excuse yourself to take the call, and he informs you that she has just passed away. You check Facebook and see that he is not lying. Story 36. Anything that can bleed for 7 days and not die sounds like something straight out of a horror movie. Story 37. If they have unhealthy attachments to their cat or dog, referring to it as their child or fur baby and constantly using baby talk with their pets, they need to understand that they are not children, they are pets. Story 38. I had an ex invite herself over to my house. After I explicitly said, "No, I'll be taking a shower. I'll meet up with you afterward," she replied, "I'll just wait for you in your bedroom." "No, I'm going to be nude and getting changed." "You can't do that." Story 39. As a woman, if I were a man, I would find it creepy when women use emoticons in a serious manner or behave in a childish way. Story 40. When someone is fishing for a compliment, if I want to express my interest, I will, and you will know it. Fake fingernails, fake eyelashes, tattoos on the face and neck. The artificial puffy lips make me want to hand out antihistamines. Story 41. The simple fact is that women can be just as frightening or unsettling as men. They approach it differently. I have read many stories of women committing terrible acts. Stalking appears to be quite common. Story 42. Besides a significant hunchback, there isn't much that aligns with men's perspectives. Ladies, evolution is responsible for many men's tendency to engage with anything that resembles a good time. Add alcohol and farm animals, and you have a chaotic situation. Story 43. There was a girl I used to work with, and I had a good rapport with her. One day, she got into a fight with the manager, so I went to ask if she was okay. She told me to mind my own business and to leave her alone in front of others. I felt embarrassed, but I respected her wishes. I didn't contact her again and kept my distance, even after she was fired. One day, she called me and said I let her down and was not there for her. Felt unsettling when the text messages kept coming. I stood my ground and didn't reply to any of them. Story 44. Calling persistently after a first date and requesting a second date even when told no. Suggesting sexual favors despite the negative response. Story 45. She will probably blow up my phone if I don't respond to her text right away. I have experienced that before, even after telling her I am not at my phone while working. Story 46. A childhood sheltered from activities that would help her develop social skills and self-awareness can be attributed to her parents. Story 47. When they have a cult-like obsession with celebrities and singers. A few years ago, my wife had an argument with a friend over serious matters, but the friend kept insisting that she never should have trusted an Ariana Grande fan. All because the friend preferred another singer whose fans are apparently rivals with Ariana Grande fans. It's crazy. Story 48. Whatever men are doing is literally the reason I have my husband. He currently can't comment here for himself because he doesn't get service on his cell phone. Story 49. When she threatens to do something terrible if you cheat on her, I wasn't going to. But would you really do that to me? Story 50. I had an older female coworker ask me if I could tell the difference between real and fake breasts. It definitely gave me the creeps the way she said it. Story 51. Not understanding boundaries or continuing to pursue when I have made my disinterest obvious. I matched with a girl on a dating app, and we messed around for a little while. I wasn't serious and made that clear to her from the start, but I could tell she had fallen hard. She kept pushing for more. Not intending to mislead her, I told her this wasn't going to work out and ended it. She still kept texting me, so I blocked her number and removed her from all social media. Sometimes, I would check my call log and see her number in recent calls. It turns out that even if you block someone, you won't receive a call, but their number will still appear in recent calls, if they have called you. And this girl kept calling me almost every day. Months later, I received a friend request on a social media platform from an account I didn't recognize. I ended up adding it. It was her, of course. She sent me a message that simply said, "Come outside." I looked out my front door window, and there she was, sitting in her car parked outside the mailbox. For the record, I had never invited her to my house or given her my address. When I didn't come outside, she walked up to my front door and waited. I opened the door to confront her and saw her. She looked miserable and begged me to take her back. I should have lost my temper right there, but surprisingly kept my cool. I told her I wasn't interested, and if she ever pulled this again, I would call the police. She finally got the point. Story 52. When a woman comes on too strong, it can feel excessively friendly. Who doesn't like the attention, right? I'm not entirely complaining, but it makes me cautious because there may be an ulterior motive, like trying to make someone else jealous or some other form of manipulation. I pick up on it quickly and set boundaries now. It isn't easy being the confident person that I am. Story 53. When you get married after discussing a life without children and you find prenatal vitamins and a book titled Before You Conceive hidden in your closet. Story 54. Calling someone a creep whom they have never met or spoken to before. What secrets are they hiding in their closet? Story 55. Bright red lipstick that goes beyond the vermilion border of the lips. Rapid eye fluttering at all times. Wearing sunglasses indoors. Scabby legs. Obvious lies in an attempt to brag. Any talk about biting. Pooping in the bed as seen in the Amber Heard case. Story 56. I am gay, but I am also 6 feet 4 inches tall, which seems to attract the attention of women. I have had a few women tell me they could change my orientation, which is inappropriate and unsettling. Story 57. Constantly discussing having children together when you are not even dating, just beginning to spend time together. Calling multiple times in a row when you are busy and unable to talk, especially when she knows you are at work and it's not an emergency. Story 58. I had a woman I really liked and saw potential with. This was years ago, back when I used to smoke marijuana every day. After about 4 months, she started complaining about it. I could understand if it was related to me being unmotivated or distant from being high all the time. However, she expressed concern about my sperm count and my ability to get her pregnant, as if it was a reasonable concern just 4 months into our relationship. Then she admitted that she had planned on getting pregnant by me by that time and intended to keep the baby. She had told me she was on birth control, which turned out to be a lie. I discovered that in the same conversation. Freaked me out. There had been no indication of this kind of behavior up to that point. I quickly distanced myself. Story 59. Behaving like someone in a pornographic movie. Many men enjoy adult films, but we recognize that they represent a fantasy and do not reflect how normal, healthy individuals behave. When encountering a woman who seems overly eager or exhibits behaviors typical of adult films, it can feel unsettling. For example, I was at a bar once with about 40 intoxicated men and very few women. One woman, who was moderately attractive, was behaving inappropriately by trying to attract attention from everyone. She was practically trying to dance provocatively on all the men. Not a single man wanted to engage with her because her behavior was strange. She likely could have gone home with someone had she simply sat down next to him, initiated a conversation, and flirted in a more natural way. Story 60. When they get your number from you giving it to the cashier for market points, it happened to me twice. I thanked them but said it was a little weird and I didn't want to start a relationship like that. One was understanding, while the other started swearing at me on the phone. The strange thing is that if anyone had asked me in the market, I would have loved it and would have at least gone on a date with them. Story 61. Trawling social media for every piece of information about someone they have developed an interest in. Story 62. I don't know if it's creepy, but it definitely gives me the feeling of discomfort. When a woman is overly confident, she tends to judge other women and thinks she is better than them. Story 63. Simply being a stalker is creepy enough. It involves thinking you are in a relationship when you are just friends, being strange and introverted, and trying to use witchcraft with a love hex. Story 64. Obsessed with your social media followers from before you met her. I feel like men receive more criticism for being peculiar regarding social media, while women being jealous and controlling in that way is considered cute. Story 65. Someone only asks this if they are being inappropriate. Please tell us the exact situation. It might not be that bad. Story 66. When I was 16 or 17, a guy convinced me to take him, his girlfriend, and a couple of her friends to a movie. One of those friends sat on my lap during the movie and told me she loved me at the end. At one point, she mentioned she was ready to have my children. She also had big, wild eyes. The story ended with her trying to find my new girlfriend's address and my address after our breakup. It turns out she had borderline personality disorder. Story 67. Dear lady I met at the bar. I'm glad you liked my scent. It was a bit unsettling when you brought each of your friends over to me throughout the night, trying to get them to smell me. Trying to lean into my taxi for one last whiff before I left felt too invasive. Story 68. Recently, I was talking to a woman who wanted to meet up. She is in Canada and I am in the United States. One night, she went out to a bar and started messaging me, saying she was on her way and then asking where she was going. I never gave her my address, and I was sleeping at the time. Story 69. I met a waitress who mentioned that her husband was getting tired of her filling the freezer with roadkill. She had an amateur taxidermy hobby but apparently didn't have much time for it. This led to a backlog of dead animals she had collected from the road and frozen in her family's freezer. I never ordered another meal from her the same way again. Story 70. Not respecting your boundaries and time, guilt-tripping, calling you multiple times when you're busy, and threatening with a breakup because you didn't answer. Story 71. She dumped me and then showed up at my house, walked in the back door to confront the new girl I was seeing, and told her, "He's mine." Story 72. She walks into my office, where I am the only one present, and says, "Somebody smells good in here." Then she invades my space by getting closer. Why, after saying she can smell me from the door, does she need to come closer? Story 73. I have never met a creepy woman, unless you consider the woman who looked at me, stared, and followed me around the building at an old job to be creepy. She transferred to another place after she got me fired from that job. Story 74. Showing an unusual amount of interest or acting overly desperate can be uncomfortable. Women always have options, and when you become their only option, it creates an awkward situation. Story 75. Overly needy behavior can manifest as anxiety when there is a delay in response, such as not answering a message within 10 minutes or not immediately picking up phone calls. Excessive clinginess may involve discussing love and long-term commitment too early, such as on the first date or before intimacy. Overbearing dominance can be characterized by an inability to accept compliments and having excessively rigid boundaries. A lack of confidence may be masked by sarcasm, frequent use of expressions like laugh out loud or ha ha, and not standing up for personal values. In essence, it is important to find a balance between masculine and feminine traits rather than leaning too heavily in one direction. Story 76. I usually associate creepiness with men. Women can have negative characteristics, but I believe there needs to be a sense of unease and fear for your safety to feel creeped out. Story 77. Not necessarily creepy, but exhibits negative traits such as no reading, a lack of physical activity, excessive phone usage, and shallow friendships. Story 78. Probably making me promise her during the first date that I would give her a baby. We had met long distance when I first responded to her ad where she was searching for a pen pal friend. Shortly after starting to write to each other, we exchanged photos, and she immediately made it clear that she was interested in being more than pen pals. So even before meeting for the first time, I already knew that the date would be successful. But I was definitely not expecting to be pressured into promising her a baby. Long story short, the more we dated, the more it became annoying to hear about having a baby. It seemed there was nothing else to talk about but that. She was so adamant about it that it was all on her mind constantly. The biggest red flag, however, was when she told me she quit her job because it was the perfect opportunity to start trying. Rather than flat out telling her no, I was just stalling and coasting my way through the relationship in hopes that she would eventually get over it. She finally left me when she realized I wouldn't budge. Good riddance. I won't deny that there was passion and intimacy in bed, but I felt the relationship had become toxic for me personally. After the breakup, it only took me a few days to get over her. The relationship hadn't lasted even a year, about 8 months maybe. Story 79. Needing to be rescued. You are an adult, wanting me to order her food. Being shallow, your looks will fade. Setting males up for tests. The other list of toxic misogyny is a separate question. Story 80. Revealing her number of partners and all the men she has been with is both unsettling and disrespectful. Spreading herself so casually to many is not an accomplishment. Additionally, having multiple children with different fathers is a significant red flag. Lastly, I worked with a woman who would tilt her head downwards and roll her eyes upward to stare at you for 10 seconds. I promptly let her go after a 3-month period for instigating conflicts with other female colleagues. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.